Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Tripp, the Global Head of Coaching, Impact, and Innovation with ASUP. And today I have the distinct privilege of interviewing Wagner Denuzzo, his book, Leading to Success. Greetings, Wagner.
Hi, Paul. This is an amazing opportunity for us to discuss topics that relate to ASUP. And thank you, ASUP, for sponsoring this event and your coaching practice. So this all comes together very nicely. So
yeah, I agree. So I'd like to start unconventionally because, I could list all your titles and, your participation, but I'd really like the audience to get to know you. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So the first question I have is, I'd like to start by asking you to tell us the pivotal moment when you realized that your vision for yourself was bigger than what other people were seeing in you. And what happened in that moment?
This is so interesting because it brings me back when I was an employee assistance program counselor. I started as a licensed psychotherapist. My career was based on psychotherapy and social work. And I was the director of an employee assistance program, and the CEO was very focused on expanding market share, employee assistance. Meanwhile, I was having the idea that the workplace needed coaches. They need people who could advise management to not create the conditions that are leading employees to the hotline. And the leader said, no way, that's not our job. And I just wanted to grow our accounts. And suddenly I realized he doesn't see how I could actually exponentially grow his business in a way that he didn't think about before. That's when I decided to go on my own. I decided to go on my own. I became an executive coach. I became a HR consultant, team coach, and was a fabulous experience, to be honest. So that was a pivotal moment. Thank you for asking for that.
So when you realized that, how old were you?
I was already in my late 30s by
Late
then
30s.
because as an immigrant, I didn't start my professional life until I was 29.
And then you decided to quit the corporate job and pivot into coaching, yes?
Yes. And I spent 4.5 years on my own. And then you have to, I talk on the book about sense making. You have to observe the signals in the market. You have to always be ahead of the curve. And in 2007, I noticed the downturn in finance and the world. And that's when I went to IBM because I said, no, I don't think by myself I'm going to make it. And that was a pivotal moment as well.
You just mentioned staying ahead of the signals in the market. And I know at ASAP, we're really focused on team coaching. And, we started with individually coaching. We're still individually coaching, and team coaching has really become a focus for us. What are signals that you are seeing in the marketplace related to coaching or team coaching, individual or team?
This is interesting. This is my experience with executives, doing executive development, management development, and all that, and transformations. If you've been part of transformations, you can see how executives sometimes have a hard time distributing power to distribute teams. They have a hard time sharing the ideation process because there's a lot at stake. So I'm saying in the book, teams are the new unit of value in an organization. Gone are the days that you would hire so and so who was the specialist in your industry who could come and solve your problems. Nowadays, we are thinking about building capabilities, critical organizational capabilities that leads you to an exponential advantage in the marketplace. And that requires teams, diverse teams. Diversity of thought is so important. You need ideas to come from places that you didn't expect. So if you don't include the user sponsor or the people who are going to be impacted by your changes, you don't have much to go on with. So I'm very empathic, and Paul, you know this. I'm very empathic towards the executives today. They are in a really hard spot. They have to respond to social media, to the board, to the stakeholders, to employees, to the customers. And it's not easy to be so ambidextrous. It's very hard. So what we need to do is to foster an idea that letting self-managed teams take the initiatives, reducing the idea that authority is only at the C-level, letting people make decisions when they need to make decisions. I think all this comes to fruition into a capability that all of them can join And change management is not that hard because everybody was involved from the beginning. It's about change engagement, not change management.
Mm. In changing engagement, we think of high value teams as people who involve the stakeholders, the decision makers,
Yeah.
maybe the customer base, right? The internal team that they could be serving, as well as the goal of the team. And because teams are so important for the future of, productivity, I wonder how you would guide organizations to prioritize which teams should receive coaching and which teams shouldn't.
Yeah. In my view, from HR strategy, we also have to shift our mindset that we hold information to be able to identify people. Self identification works if you give the criteria. For example, if I tell you, Paul, to be a high potential, to be part of this leadership development program, for example, I need you to raise your hand, go through the assessment, and if you decide to come in, you have an accountability to grow through business and teams that promote value. So it's a shared accountability that we have in the organizations today. So to start, let's start identifying the capabilities you're trying to build, identify the skills that might be required for the capability to happen, identify the technology and the talent that you need to bring and come to fruition, because some people are really good at process reengineering, some people are really good in ideation on org design. HR has to elevate the capabilities that we have today to be right there with the business to help them in the selection of teams. Creating a talent marketplace, for example. Now employees have agency. They know what the skills are they're required for the company to grow. So all this comes to an alignment of a shared accountability. So if leaders can start sharing knowledge, sharing leadership, and to be honest, my book is about this, right?
Yeah.
It's about leadership is everyone's business in this transition that we are going through. I want every single member of the workforce to start cultivating leadership skills from the beginning of their career. That's the best way forward. Because guess what? If I put you in a team, there is also self-management. There is also how do you lead yourself in conversations when you feel insecure, when you don't feel well represented, if you're a minority, for example. How many times I felt so awkward in a room that nobody had an accent? It's really hard to manage yourself in a team and give your best. So all this needs to be part of this transparent culture that we need to engender. A culture of transparency, candor, feedback, coaching. There is nothing that's creating a negative energy. I'm really into positive energy, positive psychology, for example. Actually, there was a study, Martin Seligman started the studies early on in the 60s and 70s, showing that learned helplessness is a huge hindering factor because we learned that no matter what we do, we are not going to achieve the outcomes desired. It's always a negative outcome. So when you are working hierarchical organizations, that no matter what you try to do, you're not able to bring your best skills to fruition, then you start having this learned helplessness. No matter what I do, it's not going to happen. So why try? So that's what we need to start understanding. Psychology of motivation is related to positive psychology and related to the idea that we need to see ourselves as capable.
What I heard you just say, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I really appreciate it, is that, organizations need to create opportunities for people to be able to raise their hand. And then when they do, the individual needs to understand they have a shared responsibility or accountability to the organization. Yes?
That's exactly it. So to build good teams is that shared accountability that's not an identification by the top down, but
Mhm.
it's a merger of my desire to grow skills, not hierarchically, but my desire to really contribute and the desire of the organization to bring the best to create this capability. So you're absolutely right. Teams, it's not easy, right? But I think
Yeah.
that's the goal. That's the goal.
I've heard you say, I listened to a podcast or a live presentation of you a couple of weeks ago where you talked about how there is no leader, the hero leader coming in to save the organization. And
Yeah.
how would you recommend that team leaders or leaders who are bringing teams together acknowledge that they are not the hero leader anymore. That's not where the power is.
You see, that's when I apply empathy again, because the leader themselves think about the human need, the basic human need for control and safety. That's what our senior leaders are dealing with. And with the advancements of efficiency as a goal and all this, we are eliminating some layers. So now people are fighting for relevance.
Mhm.
So you cannot discard what needs to be done from the reality that they are in. I think they know what needs to be done. Giving permission to people to do great things. We've been through the agile transformation, the digital transformation. We know that we can. It's just a matter of being comfortable changing our minds and not feeling threatened by giving power away to our teams. So executives are having a hard time. I'm very empathic towards them because they learned that power is a synonym to leadership.
Mhm.
Control is how they operationally achieve excellence. They know that they learn how to lead this way. So, what I'm advocating is if they only discover the power of collective leadership, shared goals, and shared purpose, I think the organizations could bring innovation to fruition much better. Why innovation is not happening? Paul, you've been coaching so many people. Why do you think innovation is not happening?
You know, I that's a question I was going to ask you related to you were the global head of leadership and development at IBM, right? And you developed a platform that was the most second viewed, right,
Yeah.
within IBM. And how did you learn to give away your power to innovate as the leader? How did you learn how to do that?
Humility was part of my life. I think was ingrained in me because as an immigrant, you come in with no English, no money, no social support. That's what I came in. And my education in Brazil was subpar because I was going to school at night in high school, going to school at night for my college degree. So I didn't get the best education in the world in Latin America. However, I started learning that if I share, if people share with me what they know, if I share what I know, at IBM was amazing. Our team had joy. There is a missing ingredient in all this, joy. Our teams had so much fun creating, transforming management development for 40,000 managers at IBM. And we achieved great success with studies and all this. But the formula was I was not the last word. I remember very clearly. I don't know if she's listening to us, but my one of my direct reports, she's still working there. I was writing an announcement for managers. Oh, this is the best thing the manager experience and all that. She looked at my screen and said, I wouldn't read that. That sucks. So it was wonderful. We laughed because it was always a co-creation. If we just think about what it means to co-create, it's let's be real. We know this in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Better together. You know, we do much better when we do it together. So I love that. I don't need to be me, the leader, telling them what to do because that doesn't go well.
So 3 weeks ago, you met with 50 of the leading chief human resource officers, right, around the country. I heard you say that, and I can imagine this concept resonates with them.
It does. In that sense, was the HR Innovation Summit. And was amazing to me how hungry people are for new ideas to make the culture evolve to a level of the future. So it's about cultural development, but without touching culture as a product. Because we say, oh, we are going to develop culture. How? It's not a bread that you put in the oven and comes out ready. You
Right.
know, culture is something that you have to really work on the behaviors of everyone. How you allow people to internal mobility, for example, is part of the culture. How do you allow people to connect with each other? Why senior leaders are so afraid of people connecting on open platforms? To be honest, the best thing they can do is that those jams that we used to have. IBM used to have the technology jams, can be the innovation jam, the culture jam. You let people talk for 3 days consecutively, and we just managing and facilitate. So that's the idea that we need to be more comfortable with. So in that summit, what was interesting was I talked about the HR dynamic strategy for talent because Corn Ferry has reported embrace the short term because the new workforce is coming in thinking about months, not years. They're coming in to grow their skills, grow opportunities. So, first of all, managers cannot hold talent back. Even if it's 3 months into the role, you should allow them to go. Might not be a good fit. Allow people to go where they need to go and grow their skills. So this is culture, is creating the conditions for people to do their best work and feel valued for their contribution. That's what culture development is, you
You
know?
know, when you talk about this, it reminds me of, we deploy group coaching where
Mhm.
people can collaborate in an open forum related to a business goal. We deploy individual coaching and team coaching, to be able to solve a problem or, move the ball down the field in a meaningful way. And I know that creates culture change. What
Yeah.
else works to create culture change? For leaders that are listening, what else would you deploy?
You know, it's funny, deploy is an active behavior or action. Actually, I would do less.
Okay.
HR, for example, the dynamic strategy is like the first year, the person needs to know that they made the right decision to be there. Second year, commit to what you promise in your websites because you need to provide development. So the coaching, career discussions, and all this. Third year is a fair shared accountability. If you are my leadership pipeline, I should identify you then or encourage you to seek growth. And sometimes that growth is outside the company.
Hmm.
So that's what you need to create those conditions. Now, deploy. The only thing that really works is a system of engagement. If you want to deploy a telemarketplace or a platform where employees, managers, leaders, everyone have access to data, access to what's going on, access to projects that might be going on that they want to participate,
Ah,
access to self nomination, access. So, giving access reduces the burden of HR trying to be the paternalistic function, trying to do everything for everyone. And don't make 5 year plans, make 3 year plans at most. So, you see, it's not about deploying, it's about creating the conditions again.
I love that. It reminds me, you talked about a Drucker form, enterprise to ecosystems, right?
Yes.
Right now, many are enterprise. I think of like Starship Enterprise, and I don't even like sci-fi. And then I think ecosystems, biomimicry, right, where the ecosystem exists within,
Yeah.
within a space. Talk to us about that a bit.
Well, the thing is, this is very exciting for those in HR who are listening or business leaders. Think about the enterprise, how insulation creates entropy. And it's like that's not good for the cell's development. They end up dying because there is no external input of energy or food. Think about the enterprise that's ecosystem. Now you have access to talent pools that you didn't have before. Don't think about your workforce as these limited full-time employees and contractors or shared services. No, now we have a huge amount of options.
Mhm.
Independent workers, fractional workers. Sometimes you can just borrow a team to come in and deploy and design quickly something and build your own capability. So there's so many ways that you can compose the workforce, what I call a composable workforce. That's when you start thinking about ecosystems because you are relying on partners, you are relying on external signals. I think that would be exponentially advantageous for a company that is trying to beat the market and beat the competitors, you know? So I think that's what's happening. And that's very hard to manage.
Mhm.
As you know, even in a family unit, if you allow the family to be externally exposed to the communities, to different ways of thinking, it's not easy for the parents to agree with everything.
Right,
But
right.
that's exactly what we need. So give exposure, give access. People know what to do.
What I appreciate about what you're saying here is really raising conscious awareness around this concept of, access and maybe checking in once a year. Are you still committed? Yes. Year one. Year two, I heard you say, do you still want to be here? How do you
Yeah.
want to participate differently? So, really just having conscious conversations in a way that we don't have today.
Yeah. But now that you talk about consciousness, I have to say, leadership, after all these years, There's so many models, so many
Yeah.
competencies, and all this. It came to me that actually is a much more individual journey if you think about the expressions. Leaders cannot be leaders without expressing their leadership views, beliefs, and values. So I came up with the essential leadership um, expressions. The first one is consciousness. It's about being. Who is the leader that you want to become and be? Because one thing that I like about the book is that being the emotional development, emotional health is coming to the workplace anyway, because now the doors are open. We can't deny that we are human beings. I bring my psychology background and start thinking, hey, look at the lies that you have been fed because you need to challenge them. Lies stands for learned helplessness, the imposter syndrome that we all have. If I put you in a VP position you never had, of course you're going to have a little imposter syndrome. But it's our role to support you and minimize the impact of the imposter syndrome because it's a normal reaction to a new experience.
Mm.
Then the E is for external expectations. We all have this huge burden of expectations from families and everyone
Mhm.
else, especially in careers. And then the last one is really interesting is the self-limiting beliefs. As an immigrant, I have self-limiting beliefs. I always thought I could never be successful without a great education, having such a heavy accent and all that. So all these self-limiting beliefs prevents you from being courageous. So this expression of consciousness is figuring it out. What are the beliefs that you really are yours, not fed by your development? Because if I was just like my father or like my family or like my community in Brazil, I would be a little more biased than I am today. Let's leave it at that. But but you have to challenge then. It says, who is the leader you want to become? That's consciousness, being. Then the other expression is curiosity. Curiosity to diminish the bias. Curious about you as an individual. Suspending judgment when you meet somebody who you might be perceiving as a threat is so hard. We're all humans. We immediately prevent it from surprises by judging. We need to suspend that judgment. So curiosity is part of the expression and courage. Like I always say, the example that I told you before at IBM, a managing director who was responsible for billions of dollars, I brought millennials to talk to them. And the millennial just asked, how much authority do you really have to make decisions in this huge company? The guy just turned to him and says, I have as much authority as my courage allows me to have.
I know.
I love that because
Yeah.
I really take that deeply because that's how I work. If you have conviction, your beliefs are very well challenged, and now you know what your beliefs are, and you know your values. Courage comes very easily because you have
Mhm.
conviction.
So that was the line in the book that got me. It's my second question. I have as much authority as my courage allows me to have. And I suppose I learned that at a 22 as a 22-year-old man when I was standing on a submarine and the captain told me something and I thought, "No, you're wrong." And I went off and did another thing with my life and career.
Yes.
And that authority is my courage allows me to have. Now as two older men, it's easy to say, well, have courage, step up. But what would you say to the new leader out there, that maybe hasn't had that pivotal moment yet when you realize that, oh, gee, I've got more in me than what this leader sees? How do people get in touch with it?
This sounds silly. Read my book first.
Here it is.
No, no, no. No, I'm serious. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But first, be comfortable reflecting on how your emotional development occurred. What was the context you were brought in up? What are the pressures that you experience? How people shaped the way you view the world? All this. Just all I ask is for you to reflect on that because you might see conflicting values and conflicting beliefs that don't serve you well anymore.
Mm.
And then you have to challenge fear. Fear is a really big driver of behavior. So I would say, can we focus on being more conscious about the moment? I'm not a Buddhist, but I love the idea of being present, being in the moment. That's all you have is right here, right now, me and you. There is nothing else behind, nothing else after. All we have is here. I always say mastery is in the moment because it's in the moment of coaching. I think I would love to hear this from you. You see so many coaching experiences. Isn't it amazing that moment where people get the aha moment, the insights that's so needed? Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my favorite part of coaching, that aha moment when that occurs, right?
Yeah.
And I
So,
think there needs to be a willingness or at least a curiosity.
but I have to say, so I have to say because I was touched. I get emotional when I think about this because I do believe in Gen Zs as our hope for the future. People say they are lazy, they are this, they are that. I mentor about 9 Gen Zs. And I can tell you how much effort they put into creating meaning in life, how much effort they put into themselves to be at their best. I have someone who actually is carrying the financial burden of the family at 25. She's a founder, she has a full time job. She just got accepted in an MBA at Holt, and she's carrying the burden at 25. Like, don't tell me that Gen Zs are lazy. Then I went to Baruch 2 weeks ago, Scholars of Finance. They're so committed to creating value for communities and the collective well-being through finance. I
Mm,
was so touched by them. They all first generation Americans. Everybody was so diverse. I couldn't believe how diverse they were. It was an immediate connection to the future. And I said, the future is brighter than we think.
mm.
We just need to give them the opportunity. So,
You raise an interesting point about Gen Zs. They do get a bad rap.
yeah,
And you're talking about how they're able to see the world and envision it differently than maybe you and I. I was taught put my head down, keep my mouth shut, work hard, I'll go somewhere. And the younger generation doesn't necessarily believe in that. They believe in creating differently and seeing things differently and participating differently. And yet, maybe the senior director right now or the VP level in a company has maybe more of our mindset. They lean more towards 40s, 50s, right? So,
yeah.
how does a young person today, how do you bring those together in a meaningful way?
I think it's shared accountability again because, yeah, it's easy for me to say, oh, senior leaders have to allow people to do. No, we grow maturity by understanding the constraints of the environment, don't we? We all had that experience of like, oh, there are some constraints, they are beyond anybody's control. This social, economical, government, global, everything that's happening is beyond one person's control. And that's how you understand that is by being part of the operational model and all this in the organization. But I have to say, what Gen Zs and millennials, for that matter, what they're discerning about. I talk about the 5Ds, right? The 5Ds of the workforce. They're distributed, they're dynamic, they're digital, they're diverse, and
Mhm,
they're discerning. They're
mhm,
discerning because now they are thinking, what kind of experience do I want to have? What kind of opportunity do I want to pursue? What kind of beliefs and values this organization has that aligns with mine? So I love what's happening, but they also have the responsibility to know the compromises that they make are in function of a purpose. So, for example, if you want to grow in an industry, of course you're going to have to start with a role that might not be your best role. But there is another problem:
mm,
hiring. Hiring. Don't create job descriptions that ask for 150% of your capabilities when you only use 30% of your skills. I think we're so delusional when we ask for 150% of the skills and then just give a job that you're limited to using 30% of your skills. People don't want to go for that anymore. It's
mhm.
useless. They're not growing. So, growing, learning the flow of work. We have to adopt that and just believe that that's the best way forward.
You wrote something in your book, and I can't find it in my notes, but you wrote a concept around how sometimes people have to take jobs that maybe as a stepping stone to get to the next place, or you need to sit in a job for a while. And a lot of what I hear now is, I got in, I'm here for a year, I want a raise, I want a promotion. And so, as senior leaders listening to this, how should they manage the expectation of the incoming workforce? And what would you say to the incoming workforce around this? I want to get promoted and paid more. And
No, let's be real, Paul. Senior leaders, most enterprises have senior leaders who went to Ivy League schools.
Right.
Most senior leaders have privileged lives. I'm sorry, that's 90% of the senior leaders that I know is Ivy League schools and privileged families.
Hmm.
So it's hard for them to empathize with the new generation who doesn't know if the future holds a possibility of living a good life. They don't know. But I usually, well, for me, it's easier, I think, because I tell my story. I was a college graduate, come from Brazil. What did I have to do? Be a busboy. I was a busboy for 5 years after college.
That was my
Oh,
first job too, Wagner.
but not after college, I
No,
guess.
no.
I was in my 20s cleaning tables for like years before I could even do something that might resemble a career. But that's easy for me because I had that life. Now, these kids saw their parents coming to this country. There's a lot of young folks who have seen how difficult it is to make a living, and now they're really concerned. So they want to accelerate their careers. They want to maximize their earnings right away. It's kind of our role now not to reject, but to empathize. It's not your reality, but it's theirs. Respect their reality. And you
Mm.
can say, I respect your reality. I know in your shoes, I probably would expect the same. Let's talk about how we can prepare ourselves to build value, skills, and grow your skills in leadership as well, because you might want to be a leader of your own business one day. But I'm here to talk to you about how you can create value here and how we can develop your skills here. Is that's all you can do. It's like being resilient in front of the crisis of your employees. You cannot rescue them. Nobody rescues anyone. All you can do is witness, help, support, and adjust your expectations so people feel that you're supportive.
I want to articulate that again because that is such an important point that you just brought out of, sometimes senior leaders think it's their problem to solve when the junior person wants more pay or promoted faster or whatnot. And what you just said was acknowledge them, see them, say, hey, we need to work on some skills or, whatever it is that how can they partner together to go to the next level. So to acknowledge it, not push back against it.
Yeah. And be creative. People talk CEOs. Do you see CEOs value creativity a lot? Since
Sure.
2010, IBM Institute of Business Value created the CEO surveys and all that. From 2010, we are saying the same thing. CEOs believe creativity is going to be the most important skill that you can have. But do they display it? Do they allow? Do they create the conditions? Do they give permission to people to be creative? So it's all this game of, it's not a game. I'm sorry. I don't think it's a game. I think it's just circumstances and the dynamics of the organization, especially for quarterly earnings. When you have an organization that depends on quarterly earnings.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm talking about creativity because I'm trying to engender the idea of this. You might not have the capability of changing the environment or the context you're in, but how can you be smart enough to use the context to your advantage and create something that's meaningful to you, that can create value for you, for your community, for your team? And I tell my story about getting a job at IBM, right? That I didn't know anybody there. I create 15, my kitchen table, 15 combinations of somebody that I saw the name was the head of diversity and talent. And I create 15 combinations of his name at us.ibm.com because I didn't know his email. And I called the secretary, said, no, never. I'm not going to pass anything. Just go to the different channels. So I didn't give up. You have to be creative. I was very creative. I would have never been at IBM if I didn't write those 15 combinations. One went through, and all I said is I have the conviction I can add value to your organization because I believe in your values, which I did. He responds, says, I'm going to send you HR. HR came to me and said, what do I do with you? I'm just interviewing you because somebody asked me. I said, I don't know what you can do for me, but I can be your biggest culture evangelist because I truly believe in your values. I got a job in 3 weeks. So you have to be creative. You have to use what you have. I didn't have anything else. I didn't have social capital. I didn't have any money. I didn't have the degrees from Ivy schools, and I didn't have experience in corporate. Was a miracle, actually.
So, we just gave some guidance to senior leaders in terms of how they acknowledge, right, the up and coming workforce. And now you've just talked to the up and coming workforce about how
Yes.
they can lean into if something looks like a wall, it's not a wall. There's a way around it. You develop 15 combinations to get there.
Is that learned helplessness? Challenge your lies. If you have learned helplessness, you're always going to see an obstacle before you see an opportunity. You're always going to be your self-limiting beliefs. Oh no, I can't climb that wall. You're always going to see imposter syndrome. Oh no, I never been there. How can I be there? And that's what's happening with equity, because we're not pushing people towards the high level positions because they're never ready. It's like, of course they're not ready. They didn't have the experience. They didn't have the opportunity to gain experience. Let's start giving them the opportunities instead of them pushing them aside. And that's what's happening in corporate. I think people are evaluating their advancements, their promotional criteria, because it's not about what you did in the past. It was about what you're willing to do in the future and the courage of senior leaders to allow you to do it. You know?
As you're talking, I'm thinking about the power of team coaching. And, as a team coach, I go in, listen to the story that the team has, the one voice of the team, and I challenge it.
Yeah.
You're saying you're this, but I'm hearing this.
Yes.
This is not consistent, right? And
Oh,
so
I love that. I have a little motto in my books that's the idea motto. I always thought about disruptive coaching. So the idea is simple. It's a 6 session model. The first one, you of course you identify the goals. Of
yeah,
course, you need to
of
do that.
course.
But the next 2 sessions is the D, disrupt their thinking. If
Yes.
we as coaches cannot disrupt somebody's thinking just for elaborating better, to
Yes.
explore opportunities and discovering these options, then you don't get anything. Then you're just fostering this myopic view of what they want to do. Then the E is encourage experimentation. And the S, now A is activate your plans. But it's very simple. And one thing about I tell you, for those who are aiming for career advancement, don't put that pin on the map. That's so old school. Just think about the direction you're taking. But
Mm.
the moment you put that pin, you don't see all the opportunities coming for you.
Mhm.
Because my life has been like that. I never thought about being an HR strategist. I never thought about being the head of future of work. But if you don't pay attention to the opportunities you have to use your skills, you're gonna miss it because that pin is a little myopic, you know?
Yeah, and to that, I'll go back to the ecosystem comment, right? The
Yes.
Drucker forum. When you put the pin on, you're thinking in terms of enterprise. And I'm
Yes.
hearing you say, be in the ecosystem. If you need to make a lateral to go up, make a lateral to go up, right?
Yes.
Be open to the opportunity.
Take detours. Life cannot be planned so much that eliminates your opportunity to be spontaneously curious and explore opportunities. That's not life. That's kind of harsh life. If work becomes punishment for existing, I don't think that's what we want. You know?
Let me ask you this. I'm sure there were times in your career where advancement didn't happen or you didn't have all the variables and there was resentment.
Yes.
How did you deal with the resentment? How did you overcome it or work around it to see the next opportunity?
But you see, this is maybe it's my psychotherapy practice and going to therapy myself. I was in therapy myself. I'm not immune to
I
mental health.
mean, hello.
Yes. So I learned that those are only reactions. I always allow myself to have reactions, not in front of the person, but I allow myself to be bitching about it. Take 3 days to bitch about things. But then you come to a conclusion that's in your hands to find a way forward. Sometimes it's not forward, sometimes it's lateral. But I have to say something. There is a moment where you let go, don't force things too much, and suddenly opportunities start coming just because you're not so concentrating, so stressed, so focused on one idea. It's that pin idea. Take that for all your life because sometimes it's when you can relax, be at your best. That's all you can do is show up as your best. The rest is the dynamics between me and you. So it's tricky, but I have to say, look, there are some non-negotiable skills. You have to learn to be reciprocity is a skill. Sense making in this crazy world, you have to learn. Digital fluency, you have to have. And you have to have what I call cognitive mastery. Is the ability to understand your emotional reactions because you have things happening in the past to you and you know how you carry on. And then if there was a black snake in the past, there will be a black snake in the future, I guarantee you. So you have to be able to cognitively master that reaction, pause, and respond appropriately. And resilience, I talk about adaptive resilience. That's really important. It's not grit. Oh, I tough it up and I go through situations the same way that you came in. That's why I say don't bring all yourself to work,
Mhm.
because that's not healthy. Because you might be obsessed about cleaning your house. That's not good for the teamwork that you're in. So there are things that we need to be flexible about what is appropriate for the situation I'm in. And I think that's adaptive resilience. I'm adaptive to the situation and I respond accordingly, not losing authenticity. That's different. Being authentic is not reacting the same way everywhere. It's about acting based on your values, your conviction, and your views and your beliefs. That's authenticity. But you might have to modulate your communication to adapt to the context.
Mm.
There's so much to learn early in career. All
Yeah.
this early in career that you have to learn.
You raised another interesting point, which was one of my questions about not bringing your whole self to work. And of course, now we're hearing, people want to bring their whole self to work. At Amazon, people bring their dogs, right? You can bring your parrot, you could bring whatever you'd like to work, and it's okay. I wonder, how do leaders help people understand you can be yourself, but maybe you can't bring your whole self? How do you square that conversation?
Think about a time when you felt uncomfortable asking somebody to stop using perfume because you're allergic. Think about a time that somebody made you uncomfortable because they're doing something that really was detrimental to you, but you didn't know how to approach. You know, all I'm saying is you don't know the reality of each individual. So, what you're trying to do, we are trying to do collectively, is what is the common denominator? Common denominator is respect for each other. Common denominator is expression, free expression of your feedback, coaching, and all this. But we need to respect what we don't know. We are going to learn, but little by little, you have to start what's common to everyone that might benefit the collective.
Mm.
Then you introduce your ideal selves and your ideas and yourself. I think it's such a good way of saying, hey, I'm not saying for you to curb your enthusiasm. You must be a wonderful person because we hired you, first of all. Uh, but I want you to be just conscious and conscientious about the environment that you're in. That's all,
Mm.
you know?
So I'd like to just pivot for a minute around
Okay.
remote work.
Oh, remote work. Okay.
Here's the thing. COVID, everybody went remote, right? And then it was, we're never coming back. And now, as a coach, and I know as a coaching company, ASAP is hearing over and over and over again, now everybody back to office. And hybrid work is sometimes an option. How do you encourage or think about supporting leaders in this time of people aren't happy? People don't want to come back to the office.
I was working with a team of leaders recently. It's not okay to tell leaders you should do this, you should do that. Because like I said, if it is like weight loss program, why do we have 5 million programs? Now we have pills, it's different. But why do we have 5 million programs? It's not about the what. I think if you read my book, if you read somebody else's book, it doesn't need to be mine, you know what to do. The
Mhm.
problem is that it's so hard for us to move ourselves from this moment of comfort to the moment of being uncomfortable. You know how it is. We all been there. So, number one, you're discerning. You need to know how much you're willing to compromise as an individual. How bad will it be to go back to the office? For us, generations that work in the office for so long, for us, I think it's so much easier. Let's be real. It's easier because we always did that.
Right.
This is new now, but like global companies always dealt with with the teams all over the world. It's funny to me that Suddenly, remote work becomes a novelty. It's like, when did remote work become a novelty? I don't understand. But for global companies, it's logical. They always been. But then you have to consider the board of directors, what they're expecting of you, what your stakeholders are expecting of you, what is the market saying without saying. Because think about financial services. Do you think it's a coincidence that all financial service organizations are bringing everybody to the work? Do you think it's a coincidence?
Yeah.
Do you think it's an industry needs to bring everybody? Think there is this group thinking. CEOs, their C-suites, there is group thinking, because at this point, like I said, there is vulnerability. People don't want to lose their jobs in the C-suite. People don't want to put their neck on the line when there's so many other things that they need to work about. So it's not that I'm saying they're not courageous enough. They're placing their bets where there's most value. And right now, this might not be the crucial, because the employment situation, people need work. So let's put it this way. There are conditions creating the opportunity for these leaders to say, no, you're going to come back. Because if the conditions were different, they couldn't find the skills. We are going back to 1980s and 1990s. Oh, where do we find these skills? Oh, of course you can work from Texas. Of course you can work from India, because we need those skills. You see, that's a skills-based economy, is a location variable according to group thinking, according to industry and executives. Let's put it this way. The last thing I say: if you are a senior executive that you spent 20 years in your career focusing on what worked for you and what's right, I think people don't know how to situate themselves in this digital environment. People always said to me, oh, people don't collaborate well. Oh, people don't have intimacy if you are not personally there, because you know how it is. You hug, you touch. I said, first of all, let's not hug and touch all the time, because that's, some people don't like that. It's not about that. So we create this fantasy that intimacy, collaboration only happens in person. That's not true, because I had team members like me and you now. I know we have a lot of people watching, but me and you. You're
Yeah.
in your environment, I can see it. I'm in my environment, you can see, you can hear my dog. We have such intimacy because I have the opportunity to ask how you're really doing. How do you really feeling about all this? In a workplace, now that the walls are gone, there's 500 people around you. Every
Mhm.
time you want to have intimacy, you have to go to a cubicle or another place, like a phone booth. You see, it's ridiculous what we are saying. Stop the narrative. If you want people back to work, that's my recipe. And I did this. I did a whole deck on this, but didn't go anywhere. Start creating memorable experiences. I ask you this to senior leaders: how many memorable experiences did you have in the workplace prior to the pandemic in 1 year? How many? Probably three or four or
Yeah.
five.
Yeah.
You didn't have more memorable experiences that really were meaningful to you more than 5 times a year. The rest was like daily work. So create memorable experiences.
Mm.
Imagine the money that you're saving in the transportation, saving the planet a
Mhm.
little bit, and bringing people together 4 times a year or 3 times a year, making meaningful conferences and conventions that brings people with meaningful experiences. How powerful could that be? Some
Mhm.
companies are doing that. So I say there is options,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
think people have to be discerning and compromising, because sometimes, look, being in the office is not the worst thing in the world, but blindly following something that you don't feel comfortable with, that might not be good for your health.
Mm. That's interesting. I mean, in coaching, this comes up all of the time. I really appreciate your perspective, around what you're seeing and hearing. I'd like to go back to the beginning when you found your voice of courage, right? And you left the job. And now, as you've matured through your career, I often work with senior leaders who are afraid to.
Did you freeze or
They have golden hand. Nope. Am I here? Can you see me?
now I can hear you.
Did I
Yes.
freeze?
Ask again.
Okay.
No, ask again. Ask
Okay.
again.
I guess my question was so hot it burned up the line, right? Sometimes senior leaders get to a space where they're risk averse.
Yeah,
Golden handcuffs, kids in college,
yeah,
and the courage that you had in your 20s, or I guess it was 30s when you left. How do you recommend or work with leaders to keep that courage,
yeah.
to
Well,
forward lean?
I go back to that step of conviction and belief. I think you're frozen again, but hopefully people can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I go back to Ginny Rometty once said this, and I think that was fabulous. She went into a room and she said, "I'm going to talk to you about DNI, but I truly believe that DNI is a belief that you hold within yourself. If that's not a belief of value for you, leave now. Go take a break. Go drink coffee. Because no matter what I say here, it's not gonna. You're not gonna internalize what I say." I love what she said because the role of the leader is to create belief, to build belief in their people. So I don't know if you're frozen or mine, but I continue to talk. And
Hear you.
okay, good. And I think for senior leaders, the same thing. You have to act according to your beliefs. There's no other way to be courageous if you don't have beliefs and views and this idea that actually you have a positive impact in the world. It's all that passion for making an impact in the world. Some of us do, some of us don't. But senior leaders would benefit from internalizing the idea that introspection might lead them there.
Mhm.
Hey, what might be holding you back from this? What fears do you have about what if? Or post or pre-mortem, right? Okay, you allow this to happen. The worst thing that can happen is that they made a bad decision. And I have a great call. This is a great one to end here, kind of. There was a leader that made $1 million mistake. And this is real life story. He went to his boss and said, "I know why you want to see me. I know I'm not going to be here for long, right?" He said, "Why would I fire you if I just invested $1 million in your learning?" That was amazing, isn't it? That's a values based belief in leading. Why would I fire you if I just
Mhm.
spend $1 million in your development?
Mhm. Mhm.
Was beautiful. And I think that's what you have to instill in leaders. Hey, do you want to express who you really want to become? Do you want to express who you really are today, not yesterday? Do you want to be seen as somebody? How would you like people to see you? That's a good question too.
Mhm.
You know?
There's a comment in there about how DEIB has to be part of your DNA in order to participate. And I saw a comment you posted a few weeks ago about women in leadership and how stop offering women training because they're ready to go. You're not offering men in leadership training. Why are you offering, women in leadership training? However, we are hearing a need in the marketplace to have programs for women leaders because sometimes they don't have the vernacular to be able to talk about a pay raise or because they weren't socialized, right? And there's opportunity for them to hear it differently. Talk to me about it. Am
Oh,
I
I
off?
love that you brought this. Okay, don't misunderstand me.
Yeah.
All I was saying is at the time of talent reviews or promotions, don't push women and delay their advancement by pushing them into programs.
Ah.
I'm saying bet on their capacity and capability to grow in the role. Put them there and do what Diane Gerson used to say, SSS, these success support services. I believe in that. Instead of putting that program, I put you here. You're going to be the VP that you've never been, but I'm going to give you success support services, coaching. I'm going to give you opportunities to grow through development. That's what I was saying. But I do agree with you when you place them there, that's part of the success support services. Of course, this is an opportunity for you to be in this development program to develop those skills that you didn't have, but don't deny them the advancement. That's what I
I
said.
see. I see. I like that. And I appreciate the clarification
Yeah,
because, I really do think there's an opportunity for people who weren't exposed, to, for whatever reason, socioeconomic or whatever,
sure.
to, for programs to exist to say, hey, this is how you might scale, or, look at your future differently.
This is funny because I do like TikTok because I get to see the Gen Zs what they're doing. But this reminds, there is a new trend now about, oh, I was born today. The guy who said, oh, for the first time I realized that there's a difference between softer and the sheets that you put in the dryer. And I have that. I was from a country that I didn't learn how to be a man with tie or suits. I didn't know it. I remember clearly the first time I presented to HR New York. Oh my God, that was so embarrassing. The woman came to me and says, Wagner, you don't have a collar stay. Your collar is all wrinkled and things. I said, what's a collar stay? I had no idea what these things were called.
Yeah.
So you have to realize that people come from different realities, that they don't know everything you do. That's why those services are so important. That's why non-judgmental approaches to here and now are so important. So don't be judgmental about yourself and don't be judgmental about others. When it comes to you, start laughing about it. I didn't know about this. It's brand new to me. To others, try not to be judgmental because that's their realities, not yours.
I think we'll leave it there. I have to say, reading your book, Leading to Succeed, was a pleasure. And I want to thank you for your time. And I want to acknowledge ASAP as well for giving this this opportunity. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close out, Wagner?
I just love to keep saying, be engaged, not attached. Be fully engaged. But the moment you're emotionally attached to something, you lose the opportunity for co-creation. So be engaged, but not emotionally attached.
That's a lesson that took me a lot of years to learn.
And
coaching has helped me. And I think that really resonates with me. I think that I'm engaged and maybe no longer emotionally attached to the outcome, because believe it or not, I can't control everything, even though I really think I want to.
Oh, no, the desire is there. I'm not saying that we don't have the desire. It's like eating the cake, but you think about it and you have cognitive mastery.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. This was awesome.
And thank you for everybody for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.